SMU fans know the importance of protecting the football. Northwest Insurance has been protecting Dallas families and businesses for over 30 years. Founded and led by proud SMU alumnus Mark Villasana, the agency fights for its clients, finding the best coverage at the lowest rates. From auto and home to business and life insurance. At Northwest, we make sure you're covered so you can focus on the big wins. Call 214-352-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com. Northwest Insurance, coverage that's always a victory. Pony up.
Northwest Insurance.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Hayden Howerton here for you guys on this college football playoff selection Sunday. We have tons to talk about as Reese Davis and the boys are all getting ready to reveal the final college football playoff rankings. As we recap and kind of get done with college football championship weekend, there are going to be a lot of broken hearts today. There are a lot of teams that played really well this weekend that are surely deserving of being in this college football playoff. There are also some teams that straight up did not show up on Saturday's slate of games, and we'll get to those. But we'll start with the ACC and just that recap of that critical game for not just our conference, but for what this selection show is going to reveal to us today. As the Duke Blue Devils go and upset the Virginia Cavaliers, the ACC has an 8-5 conference champion, guys. I mean, I look at that as, I don't know if we're in DEFCON 1 yet, but it might be that spot as we see what the playoff committee can end up doing. This was one of those nightmare scenarios for a lot of ACC teams where you want to put your best foot forward in your automatic conference champion spot. And for Duke to go out last night and play the way they did, and guys, I just have to give my hats off to the Duke Blue Devils. They balled out last night. I mean, Johnny Brewer, offensive coordinator for Duke, had a elite game plan that Duke just went out and executed at a very high level. I mean, from that opening drive where Duke took the ball, they ate up 9.5 minutes of clock. And from there, you knew that Virginia was going to be in trouble if Duke was going to be able to perform at that high of a level. I mean, the way that they were able to control that game from start to finish was something that when you look at a college football playoff team, that's what it's supposed to look like on TV. But it's their record that will not end up showing what ultimately needs to happen for the ACC. I look at Virginia as they are out at this point. I mean, there is zero shot for the Cavaliers, despite being ranked in the top 25, in my opinion. The only one who could get in for the ACC as a at-large team now is going to be the Miami Hurricanes. And you look at, is the ACC a 0, 1, or 2 bid league? And Pony up 214. What's up, man? But is the ACC a 1, 2, or no bid league? And my initial impressions, I think I'm pretty scared right now, to be honest with you guys, of how this league is going to end up turning out with ultimately an 8-5 conference champion. I mean, Miami has certainly passed the eye test, guys. Despite the loss to SMU and Louisville, which looked better and better by the game, considering how Miami played in the back half of the year, and with the parity of this conference that anybody can go out and beat anybody on any given Saturday. But for the Hurricanes to drop those 2 games and for the committee to hold them hostage to that, meanwhile, Notre Dame lost 2 games as well. Notre Dame is being propped up as a college football playoff shoo-in when Miami has the head-to-head against them. I'm hoping the committee is going to do the right thing, but if they've shown anything over the last few weeks of rankings, it's that they more than likely are going to leave the Hurricanes out. I'm hoping I'm wrong, as we're seeing Kirk Herbstreit on my screen right now. For you guys watching at home along with this broadcast, I really appreciate it. But before we get to anything else, guys, I do want to present a quick message from our sponsors. We do got to pay the bills, but we have some great sponsors that partner with us, including Status Jet. You know, we're getting ready to go to a bowl game. I want to get you guys into the right situation. So hop on over with Status Jet, man. They will get you up and going to wherever you need to go. It's a great way for you guys to get out with your friends, with your family. Hey, maybe you take a business partnership out there. They can really take you anywhere in the country, man. If you guys want to hop on for the bowl game, if you guys want to get going for basketball season, or hey, we got golf season coming up, ladies and gentlemen, of maybe you want to go hit your Masters. Maybe you want to go to one of these other major championships that are going to be around the country. Hey, we'll see our friend Bryson here in the spring as they get ready to gear back up for maybe he gets another major win. But Status Jet does a really great job. They're great friends of our show. When you guys reach out to them, tell them that the On the Pony Express team sent you, and they will get you guys going with a deal and a trip of a lifetime. But as we get back to the college football playoff rankings, guys, we're going to move over to the SEC here real quick. And that game that happened yesterday between Georgia and Alabama. And I had wrote about in my article on Friday in my what I'm looking for of that Alabama had dominated this series as of late. Georgia was 7-1. Alabama was 7-1 against Georgia under head coach Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart, that was the demon for him, as he could not defeat his former team that he was the defense coordinator for all those years under Nick Saban. But for them to finally be able to go out and get it done in the SEC championship against Alabama, now Georgia has won 2 straight SEC championships. They're going to be a top 2 team, in my opinion. I think that Ohio State will fall to the 3 spot after their loss to Indiana last night, which we'll get to in a minute. But I think that the Georgia Bulldogs played a dominant game last night against an Alabama team that now is sitting there with 3 losses. And the committee has never put a 3-loss team as an at-large in the playoff before. They've never put a 3-loss team, period. I don't think they would have done it with Duke being a 5-loss conference champion. We'll see how the committee ends up ranking us here shortly. But for Alabama, who has the losses that they have this year, so they have the win over the SEC champion, Georgia, but then when it matters, they fall in the SEC championship game. They have the embarrassing loss week 1 to Florida State that made us all drink the Kool-Aid and say that, hey, Florida State's back, when in reality, that was a fluke game for the Seminoles. And I hate to say that, considering how it looked great for our league at the time, but then with the run that Alabama went on, and then with the slide that Florida State went on, it just ended up being a fluke game. They also ended up losing to Oklahoma, and that Oklahoma team is very good. But when you are not able to take care of business at home against the Sooners, it should and will, in my opinion, be held against you. As we roll over to that Big Ten championship, guys, I just want to talk about Fernando Mendoza and the job that they have done at Indiana. Curt Cignetti, with his stature and everything that he has done and how he, quote, just wins at every single level, he is on his way to being a Mount Rushmore college football coach. If he continues to have success at the level he does, he will go down as one of the best ever, in my opinion. It's easy to say that after only a couple of seasons at Indiana, but they are seriously building something. They're going to be the number 1 team in the country today after that Ohio State game, and Ohio State got exposed. Their offense has been a question mark since the very beginning of this year, when they put up 14 points on the University of Texas, and then last night to only put up, I believe it was 10 on Indiana, 13-10. You know, I know they missed a field goal late in the 4th quarter that could have tied the game, but that was a 4th and 1 on inside the 10, where you have the number 1 roster in the country. And for you to kick a field goal and play for a tie when Indiana would have had all the time in the world to go down and do something, and where a field goal would have won, that, in my opinion, deserves to drop you out of the top 2 spots. So my prediction of what the top 3 is going to look like will be Indiana, Georgia, and then Ohio State. But as we move down to the Big 12, and that shellacking that Texas Tech gave out to BYU in a 34-7 beatdown at AT&T Stadium, the Red Raiders have checked all the boxes this year. They had the one slip up earlier this year against it was Arizona State in Tempe. And look, the Red Raiders, talk all you want about, oh, they bought the most expensive team in college football. I don't know if I believe that. I think what the shock to a lot of people is the fact that they have gone out and bought a roster that really puts them in top 10 rosters in the country. And it's just that Texas Tech has not had that kind of talent before. That is the reason for people kind of having this shock factor about the Red Raiders and everything that they've done so far. This was one of those days for Texas Tech where really everything went right. BYU really could not get those demons out that they had earlier this year against Texas Tech. Cougars, both Texas Tech. Sorry guys. Second game of the year that BYU falls to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech's going to get that 4 spot. They're going to get a bye, in my opinion. 34-7. BYU had 4 turnovers in this game, and I know they have a true freshman quarterback where he's going to fight through some stuff. You're going to have some growing pains that you do with those young guys, but for BYU to essentially roll over in that game after they drove the field and scored the very first touchdown of the game, they go up 7-0, and for Texas Tech to rip off 34 unanswered points. I mean, that is not a strong resume for this committee to do anything with BYU, despite the fact that they have those 2 losses. So the committee has a very, very difficult job today. This is, and we say it every year, this is probably the most difficult job that the committee has had up to this point, and I really do believe that up to this year. There are 3 teams that, in my opinion, are only going to fill 2 spots. You have 2 conference runner-ups with BYU and Alabama. And if we're going to make the argument that you shouldn't punish teams for playing in the conference championship, I can fully get behind that you put both of them in the playoff and leave Miami out. However, on-field results have to matter, especially late in the season. You want your teams in the playoff playing the best football of the year so that you are able to get into this playoff and be competitive. Because frankly, I think if you put a team that has just gotten destroyed in the last game of the year, football's a game of momentum. And I don't see people responding or shaking back in the same way as they would if they had lost in a very tight conference championship game. So I look at this 24-point loss for BYU. I look at the 21-point loss for Alabama. Both of those are embarrassing losses. I mean, you got run out of the stadium. You flew all the way in to put up 7 points for each of those teams. And if the committee is going to look at on-field results and resumes, you have to look at it as the full picture, not just what happened during the regular season. Because that 13th game, whether you like it or not, is a game that should and will matter. So I look at the Miami Hurricanes as, again, they dropped those 2 games earlier in the year, but after that, they were on a roll, people. I mean, I'm pulling up their last few final scores as they go 10-2. They finish tied for second in the ACC. And their last few games after SMU, 38-10 over Syracuse, 41-7 over NC State, who beat both Virginia and Georgia Tech, 34-17 at Virginia Tech. And then they go on the road and they beat a ranked Pitt team 38-7 in the last game of the year. So their last 4 games, they're giving up under 50 points total. I mean, the defense we knew in the SMU game was a very strong part of their team. And if defense wins championships, and the way that defense has played, as I'm pulling up some of their statistics and where they're sitting at this point in the year, it is a top 3 defense in the country. So for the Miami Hurricanes to finish tied for second in the ACC, not playing a conference championship game because of the tiebreaker, which I'll talk about in a second, I think it would be ridiculous for them to get left out. And for pony up 2-1-4, I would agree that Miami should get in at this point. It is the only logical thing to do if you are going to look at strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents. I'm literally reading this off the screen right now of college football playoff selection principles, and unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected past performance or likely will affect postseason performance. We haven't even talked about Ole Miss or the 2 group of 5 teams who are going to be in this playoff, all of which will be without their head coach next season. Ole Miss will be losing Lane Kiffin, which, like it or not, like the show that Lane Kiffin put on earlier this year to still ultimately leave LSU, he is a major reason, besides Trinidad Chambliss, that Ole Miss had the offensive success that they did. And depending on who they draw in whether the first round, and maybe they get by if they end up playing one of these Group of 5 champions. But in the second round, when they are going to play a legit defense in a big-time game without their head coach, I smell some disaster on the way if Ole Miss keeps that high ranking. I still think they'll be in the playoff. I don't think they're going to boot Ole Miss to the curb the way that they did to Florida State a few years back after Florida State lost their starting quarterback. But it's certainly something to look at as we go through future years of college football playoff, as the Group of 5 is turning into a farm system for the Power 4 conferences. As, hey, you win at the Group of 5 level, we're going to steal your head coach. And until the playing field gets leveled a little bit on the coaching perspective, I see that continuing to happen. And Aviation 1436 saying Miami is about to get snubbed. I hope you're wrong. I hope you're wrong. But I can see it happening. Because as we turn over to the 2 Group of 6 champions who are looking for a playoff spot here, with the Tulane Green Wave, who finish at the top of the American, which for the last 5-6 years have been kind of the premier Group of 6 team, Group of 6 conference, as I'm pulling up the standings for the American right now, where you had 3 teams in the American finish at 7-1 in conference, and you had 4 teams finish with 9 wins or better. South Florida, who at the beginning of the year, people were already putting them in the playoff, finished at 9-3 with 2 losses in league. So I look at the American, and I do have some bias considering I played in this league, as a very highly competitive league, but will always be kicked to the curb as they're only ever going to let 1 team in from that league. And then you look at the Sun Belt, where James Madison is going to come from at the number 25 team based on last week's rankings. They finished at 12-1. They finished at 8-0 in the Sun Belt. But you look at the teams that they're playing in that Sun Belt conference, next best team in the league is Old Dominion. I mean, when was the last headline you guys heard about Old Dominion, who finished at 9-3? And that's no disrespect to the Monarchs, but the level of competition is not the same as the American Conference. And I'm only comparing Group of 6 teams to justify still being able to put the ACC champion in. I think it would be foolish to put in a James Madison team that will be without their head coach, who have not played anybody all year. The one loss that they have is against the one Power 4 opponent that they have this year in Louisville. And for them to lose that game, which I believe they lost by 2 touchdowns, 28-14, and then to go on the run, which kudos to them for bouncing back and going on this run that they did. But to read off the rest of their schedule, Weber State, Liberty, who's down, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, Louisiana, Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. They won that one by 10. Old Dominion, so second best team in their conference, which this is more of an argument for them. They beat 63-27 on the road at Old Dominion. Beat Texas State, beat Marshall, beat Appalachian State, beat Washington State, who is not counted as a Power 4 opponent anymore. Coastal and Troy. So as I look at the just strength of record that they have, I would need to pull up what their strength of record is, but it certainly does not match Duke's, resume, if you will. When I know Duke struggled in out of conference, but Duke cannot control the fact that they went 6-2 in the ACC, were able to make the conference championship game, whether it was by the skin of their teeth or not. And for them to go in there and win in the fashion that they did, where they are able to play their best game of the year and win against a Virginia team that had everything going for them up to this point. 27-20 is that ACC championship game, but they've proved that they can win in a variety of ways. So 27-20 in overtime, a little more of a defensive slugfest. They put up 49 on Wake Forest. They squeaked out a 7-point win at North Carolina. And that Virginia game, I think, holds a little bit more weight when you consider the fact that they lost to Virginia earlier this year. So if we're going to talk about teams that are playing their best football at the end of the year, that is the Duke Blue Devils. They can't control the fact that earlier this year they were beaten by the American Conference champion Tulane Green Wave. So they lost to the one college football playoff team on their schedule, but they lost to Georgia Tech by 9. They beat Clemson by 1. Yes, they had that embarrassing loss against Connecticut. Connecticut was a good team this year. And it's inexcusable that the ACC champion would lose to Connecticut, but it's not like Connecticut was just this horrible UConn team that we have seen in the past. Connecticut went 9-3 with a 7-point loss against a healthy Syracuse team, a 3-point loss against Delaware, which that's embarrassing, I'll admit. 3-point loss at Rice, but then they beat Air Force. They killed UAB. They beat Boston College. I mean, this was a Connecticut team that frankly outperformed what they had on paper. Aviation 1436 says, if I'm BYU and we're at 11, I'm not playing that game yesterday. I understand your point, and my way to fix this as we get into what our solutions before they've even unveiled the college football playoff rankings. My solution to fix this is to split up these gigantic conferences. And before I dive a little bit more into that, I do want to give another shout out to one of our great sponsors.
You can't plan for everything, but you can be ready for anything. That's where we come in. Northwest Insurance Agency covers the wait, what? Moments in life with real coverage, real people, and real fast help. We offer sombrero-style coverage that protects your possessions, your loved ones, and everything else that fits under a sombrero. Call us today for a quote at 855-887-5656 or visit us at nwagencies.com.
This is the
So, guys, my way to fix this college football playoff would be to split up these major conferences. So you look at the ACC, who has 17 teams in it right now. Like it or not, that is way too large when you're trying to get multiple teams into the playoff, because all that happens is you have these teams that don't play each other, where you have many deserving teams to be in, but are left on the outside because they didn't have an opportunity to play the best teams in the conference. So when I look at how to fix this, I am going to split up the ACC and the SEC and the Big Ten and all of these other major conferences into 4 divisions of 4. As you play everybody in your division, and then you play 5 out of division games. Week 12 now turns into a playoff for the conference championship game as 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. You play the conference championship game in the last game of the year, and then the top 2 teams from that get into the playoff. But as we start the playoff committee's unveiling of the rankings, at number 1, we do have the Big Ten champion, Indiana Hoosiers. Like I said earlier, guys, this is the best team in the country right now. 13-0. Fernando Mendoza is playing his best football right now. Went out and played a very good game. I know they only put up 13 points offensively, but that also proves how great their defense is in this game, as Ohio State does come in at number 2 now. So for the Buckeyes to sit at that number 2 spot after only putting up 10 points in the Big Ten championship, it speaks more to how the committee views Indiana and how good that they think Indiana is. I know it was a number 1 versus number 2 game that Ohio State could have made better if they had kicked that 19, 20-yard field goal to be able to send that thing to overtime. But ultimately, Ohio State does end up at the number 2 spot right now. But to kind of go back to how I was going to fix the playoff, in that last game of the regular season, you just have everybody from the 5-6 play each other, the 6-7 play each other, the 8-9 all play each other, all the way down to the bottom. And so that way you're able to really determine a 1 through 16 ranking of your conference. At number 3, the second champion to hit the board will be the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart, just the job that he's done with that program, as he did get that win over Alabama yesterday. He's able to kind of prove it that he's able to win against Bama in those big games. We know Georgia's very good, guys. They have multiple national championships, including a the back-to-back that they had just a few years ago, including that win over TCU, which I always love to talk about. But for the Bulldogs, man, they are another team that just went out and dominated yesterday. Fully deserving, in my opinion, of the number 2 spot, but they will sit in the number 3 spot for now after that win over Alabama, as it will be interesting to see how many teams the SEC gets into this playoff as they continue to roll this out. I'm thinking it's at least 4, possibly 5. As speaking of 4, Texas Tech comes in at the number 4 spot. Joey McGuire, could not be happier for him, as he was a guy that recruited me to Baylor. I did lose to him in the state championship and back-to-back games when he was the head coach at Cedar Hill. I have a lot of respect for Joey McGuire and what they were able to do, as Texas Tech wins their first Big 12 championship and gets a first-round bye into the college football playoff with, hey, a great roster. Jacob Rodriguez should have a seat in New York for the Heisman presentation. I'm not saying he's going to win the thing, but with the season that he has had as a linebacker, multiple 100-plus tackle seasons, he leads all linebackers in interceptions in FBS play. Certainly a young man that is deserving of the Heisman Trophy hype that he is getting. Pony Up 214 says, do I think Miami can do any damage if they get into the playoff? I do. I do think they can do some damage. If they are able to get in at the number 11 spot and they go and play whoever the number 6 team will end up being, I think that they have played good enough football as of late to be able to beat anybody in that first round. As Oregon does secure the number 5 spot and the first home game in the playoff of this year's edition. Oregon, as we recap their record, 11-1 this year. They finished at 17th strength of schedule, but their strength of record is 4th. Their key wins, they beat Iowa, they beat USC, and then their loss is to Indiana, number 1 team in the country. So Oregon will get in at the number 5 spot. So the Duck faithful will start booking their tickets to Eugene, as Oregon will host their very first home playoff game, which will be against the number 12 team as we look to keep this rolling. The Big Ten, I think we've seen the 3 Big Ten teams that are going to get in. I think the Big 12 is done as far as the playoff with, as we recap, Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas Tech, and Oregon. And now Ole Miss is the 6th college football playoff team. So the committee does not hold them hostage with Lane Kiffin departing. They do still secure a home game in Oxford 2 weeks from yesterday against what will be the number 11 team in the country. And to kind of finish my thought from Pony Up 214, I think the Miami Ole Miss game would be must-watch TV. With how Miami's playing, with how explosive Ole Miss has been, despite Lane Kiffin being out of there, Ole Miss is still a very good football team. They have a lot of their staff still remaining, as they've gone and hired the defensive coordinator, as Texas A&M is coming in at the 7th spot. But for Ole Miss to perform at the level that they did against Mississippi State in the final game, this was a game that I was worried that they were going to have distractions, as it was the Lane Kiffin show, whether you like it or not. Everything about that game was about Lane Kiffin. It was not about how great Ole Miss was. But Ole Miss did the right thing. They hired Pete Golding the day after the game when Lane departed for Baton Rouge. They're able to get their guy. They're able to get Pete Golding, who is able to kind of continue that cultural run that Ole Miss has had. And on to Texas A&M, where they dropped from 3 to 7, despite just one loss to the University of Texas, as Kyle Field will be rocking for that home game. That is going to be one of the more difficult on-campus games for whoever ends up pulling that 10 spot and has to go to College Station to play Texas A&M. The Aggies with Mike Elko, I mean, they have had a legendary season this year. They've done really everything right despite losing to their biggest rival. I'm surprised they are still at 7. I would have thought they would have been switched with Ole Miss to take the 6th spot. Oklahoma now comes in at the 8th spot. So as far as SEC teams go, there are Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, 4 SEC teams so far. And now is where it gets to be crunch time, as the top 8 are all in. And now you have to include another conference champion and then you have to include the Group of 5 champion. Tulane is going to be in this thing. I'm just waiting for when they're going to announce it. But then it comes down to, is it Duke? Is it JMU? And then who are the at-larges? So to recap one more time, 1 is Indiana, 2 is Ohio State, 3 is Georgia, 4 is Tech, 5 is Oregon, 6 is Ole Miss, 7 is A&M, 8 is Oklahoma, and now number 9, the first 3-loss at-large team in the college football playoff, the University of Alabama. So Alabama, despite what they did against Georgia yesterday, is still able to sneak into the playoff, as they will have a rematch against the University of Oklahoma, this time Oklahoma University in Norman. So Oklahoma was able to get that win in Tuscaloosa, and now it's time to see if they can back it up in Norman. Oklahoma, with what they have done in the last couple of years, with how bad they were last year, and for them to be able to respond under Brent Venables as he is able to go out and lead this team to a 10-2 season, and I think a 4th place finish in the SEC. For that kind of rebound for him kind of proves that, okay, it proves the doubters wrong, because there were a lot of guys calling for Venables' head last year. Venables is one of those guys that I really liked when he was at Clemson. Dabo has nothing but great things to say about him. And I was a little worried his first year, as were most, when he took the job at Oklahoma. But the bounce back that they've been able to do, how they've been able to go on the road and win these marquee SEC games, as I'm pulling up their schedule, they were able to get that win over Alabama. Their losses are to Texas, which is always a toss-up with Red River, and then a 34-26 loss against Ole Miss. As the number 10 team in the country, breaking news for the ACC, the Miami Hurricanes are in the playoff. They will go on the road and face Texas A&M, who has also beaten Notre Dame, so they both have a shared win over the Irish, as the committee does the right thing and puts Miami in. I am so glad that just happened. That proves that on-field results do matter. Miami is one of the teams that will make some noise into the playoff. Pony up 2-1-4. I think they're a perfect storm against A&M. I really do. And it's not because I hate watch Texas A&M at times. I think with the way that Carson Beck has responded, the way that he has played in every game but those 2 losses, I think they're going to be able to go into College Station and silence that crowd. I really do. I think when you look at the resume comparison, as this was going to be a Miami versus Notre Dame, very similar resumes from a strength of schedule, strength of record, but the head-to-head has to matter in the college football playoff. And I'm so glad that it did, because otherwise, why even play this season? Why go out and play the games? Why not just, when the beginning of the year, 1 through 12, all right, they're in the playoff. If that would have happened, guys, Texas and Penn State would have been in the playoff. So we have to make these games matter and not just look at the preseason hype and I know Miami had a ton of preseason hype, guys. But then you look at, teams like Indiana, who were able to go 23-2 over the last couple of years, end up as the number 1 team in the country. That kind of stuff has to matter. So now we're in the last couple of picks here for this playoff committee. As only the 11 and 12 are left, I fully expect number 11 team to be Tulane, led by John Summerall for the last couple of times in his career. They're able to get the American Conference Championship. They have hosted how many games now in Tulane, in New Orleans, over the last few years, hosting the AAC Championship. But for Tulane to get into the playoff, it's going to be huge for their program, as they're on the rise despite Summerall departing for the University of Florida. The University of Florida is frankly in some disarray right now. I think John Summerall can win there. He's won at Troy. He's won at Tulane. Now he's going to get even more resources to be able to go to the SEC as Tulane makes it official. Number 11 team in this bracket. They come in at number 20 overall, but the highest ranked Group of 5 teams. So they will be in at the number 11 spot, which leaves 1 conference champion left. As they're showing the Tulane watch party, they've got all the guys there in New Orleans. Looks like a couple of twins there on the front row. Big, handsome fellas like myself. But for those guys to be able to get in, it's huge for the American. I mean, it really is. That league is proving year in and year out they are the next up, if you will, from the power rankings. They're going to steal the head coaches. That's a given. The American is going to lose coaches every single year. You lost Ryan Silverfield, you lost John Summerall, you lost Eric Morris, and you ended up losing, multiple others over the last few years as the ACC champion does get left out officially. James Madison is in the playoff. They are the number 12 team. They're in. They are the 5th highest ranked conference champion. Good on them. They took care of business when it mattered. They put together a 12-1 record, because if I'm going to sit here and talk about how it has to matter on the field, it has to matter how you take care of business and not just your conference games. Congratulations, James Madison. I'm so happy that the committee did the right thing and put at least one ACC team in. For Miami to get into the playoffs speaks volumes about how good this league is, that Miami was able to get into the playoff officially, not just talking all year long about how this is a playoff team. They were able to get in and not even play for the conference championship game. That speaks to the depth of this conference when you have a team that is that good and does not get in. First two teams out of the playoff now, Notre Dame and BYU are the two that are left out on the outside looking in. And for all of my SMU faithful, at least one ACC team getting in is good for our bowl chances, guys. It bumps SMU up a peg as far as which bowl games are going to be calling. It would be worse if no ACC teams got in and all of the bowl eligible ACC teams are sitting there scrambling for all of the bowl spots. With how competitive this league has been, somebody is going to get a bowl game that's going to be less than perfect for them, but ultimately for them to go out and get the playoff spot and be able to go on the road to Texas A&M, where I think is going to be, as I look at the games that are going to be played in that first round, James Madison is going to travel to Eugene. They're going to play at Oregon. Tulane is going to go on the road to Ole Miss, which I want to say they have already played this year, as I'm pulling up now their schedule. Give me 1 second, guys. So Tulane earlier this year, yeah, they got killed by Ole Miss. So they got killed 45-10. So I'm looking at that game as, I certainly wouldn't write off Tulane, as neither head coach being a part of the team going into next year is certainly going to throw a wrench in things. Ole Miss has already proved once in Oxford that they are the far superior team. I think it'll be closer than 35 points. I fully expect Ole Miss to take care of business in that one. Texas A&M Miami is going to be a fun game for the ACC. We're all Miami fans now, whether you guys like it or not. SMU's best chance to continue to be respected, despite our 8-4 record, at least you can hang your hat on the end of the year. Hey, we beat a team that went to the playoff. And hopefully you beat a team that makes it deep into the playoff, as I think Miami can. But that 8-9 game, Alabama goes on the road to Norman to play Oklahoma. That's going to be, those two games are going to be the best two games of the first round. And it's not because there's group of 5 teams playing in the other two, but how competitive those games are going to be because of how competitive the one already this season between Oklahoma and Alabama was. Fully expect that to put on some fireworks. And then Miami, Texas A&M, as we know, is going to be a great game. But guys, this proves why college football is so great, because you are still able to do the right thing. Teams can play their best game in the last few games of the year. They're able to be rewarded and left in the playoff. I feel for Duke winning the ACC and still being left out. I really do. But you have to take care of business, man. You can't lose to UConn. Okay? You can't lose to Tulane. If you want to be a playoff team, you got to beat the number 11 team who's in the playoff. And if you don't, that proves more why Tulane should be in. So for them to be able to go out and do what needed to be done and win the ACC, but still be left out, the only people that they can be mad about is themselves. And Manny Diaz, and congratulations to him for getting an ACC championship, something he was not able to do at the University of Miami. To go out and do it in Durham with the Blue Devils, to go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and beat Virginia in the fashion that they did. I mean, just to kind of put a bow on this whole thing, I mean, that was a game that Duke grinded them out. I mean, they had these long, extended drives, and even at the end of the game, they shot themselves in the foot a couple times with some bad penalties, and were still able to respond and go out and do the right thing and get that win. They're able to finish. We talk about finishing all the time, and I was highly concerned whenever Duke took a knee to end that game. I was like, oh, they're playing for overtime. Exactly the same thing that Mario Cristobal did against SMU. This game's over. You know, Virginia's got all the momentum. But they score a touchdown, and then they intercept Virginia on the first play of their possession. How about SMU versus TCU in the bowl game? Pony up 2-1-4. I would love that. I think we all would. That would be so much fun to face them, especially in the Pop-Tart Bowl. That would be my pick for this SMU team to try to go to. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the bowl committees want to see different teams playing each other. I would love to see that happen, but for now, I think the game earlier this year is still the last time that we're going to see the Horned Frogs. But guys, thank y'all so much for tuning in. I mean, this was a very fun college football season. It's not over yet. We still have lots of fun bowl games, a great playoff ahead of us. But for us to be able to go out and do what we were able to do at 8-4, was it a disappointment? Yes. Were you able to beat some great teams? Also, yes. You can hang your hat on the fact that we beat Miami. You can hang your hat on the fact that we went on the road and beat Clemson. It's disappointing that we weren't playing in Charlotte last night, guys, but ultimately we just didn't earn it. After that Cal game, you just didn't earn to be there. And as sad as that is, it hopefully gives SMU a little bit more fire going into this bowl season as they get ready to take the next step as a program, guys. SMU has not won a bowl game in 13 years. So this team needs to be able to go out, show some maturity, show that they can win when it matters in the bowl season in the month of December, because we haven't done that since the American Conference Championship in 2023, which was a great win. But that's the only time that this team has won in the month of December in the last 13 years. So this is going to be a major opportunity for SMU, and hopefully a great bowl game that should come out over the next 48 hours. So start making your plans to head out there. We will be out there, and I can't wait to see you guys soon. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in to this week's live edition of On the Pony Express with Hayden Howerton, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.